Hey guys, welcome back to Revealing the Biblical Truths. In this video, we will be going through the book of Deuteronomy, chapters 15 through 21. Before we get started, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, share, and comment down below, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. In chapter 15, Yahuwah gives a command that every 7 years there should be a release. Every creditor that lends money should release all the debt from his neighbor or brother. The foreigner doesn't get this benefit and must still pay, unless they are poor. In verse 12, he gives the command regarding the indentured servant. At the end of 7 years, any brother or sister who has been serving under you can go free. But when they do, don't let them go empty-handed, but provide for them as they go. But if the servant doesn't want to leave, then you take an awl and pierce their ear, and then they will be your servant forever. It's interesting that the Hebrew word for awl is martseah, composed of the letters mem, resh, tzadi, and ayin. Putting the meanings of the letters together, it can be interpreted as chaos of the head using a weapon near the eye. And an awl is an instrument piercing the ear, which is on the head near the eye. In verse 19, another command is given. It says that the firstlings or firstborn of the flocks or herd should be set apart to Yahuwah. They shouldn't be made to work or shear their wool. And they should eat it every year before Yah, but if it is spotless, then don't sacrifice it. In chapter 16, Yahuwah goes over the Passover again, and says to keep it in the month of Aviv, which means ripened barley. He says to sacrifice the Passover in the place that he puts his name. This was either the tabernacle or the temple. Today, we do not have a physical temple to bring a sacrifice to, that he put his name on, so this command we cannot keep today. So actually, sacrificing an animal to Yah, any place other than the temple, would be considered a sin. Then we are to keep the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days, and on day 7 have a holy assembly and don't work. Then count 7 weeks to Shavuot, and keep that day also, as well as keep the Feast of Sukkot or Tabernacles. In verse 19 he says to judge justly and do not take bribes. In chapter 17 he gives a command that if anyone is caught worshiping the sun or moon or other host of heaven, that person should be stoned to death. But there must be 2 or 3 witnesses, or else if there is only 1 witness, they should not be put to death. If there is a matter that is too hard to judge, then you are supposed to go to the Levites and judges there, and do what they say to do. This command we cannot truly follow today, as there are no judges or Levites set up, and no temple to bring the matter to. He then talks about when they set up a king to rule over them, that they should choose one of their brethren for the job. The king should not multiply wives or horses, as this will turn him away from Yahuwah. This happened with Solomon, and his heart was turned away. The king should also write his own copy of the Torah and read it from it every day, so he knows how to rule justly. In chapter 18, he gives a command that we shouldn't make our son or daughter pass through the fire, or use divination, observe times, be an enchanter or a witch or a charmer, or a consulter of familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. He calls all these things abominations, things he hates. Let's go through each of these till we understand what they are. As far as making your children pass through the fire, it is traditionally understood that this means to sacrifice them in a fire to a false god like Molech. However, in the exhaustive concordance, the Hebrew word abar can mean to cross over, used in any transition, specifically to cover in copulation. This lends itself to the idea of transitioning your children, covering them in copulation, like changing their seed or their gender. Divination means to seek out knowledge by using occult practices, such as calling on a fallen power. Observing times or soothsaying is trying to prophesy, but not through Yah. An enchanter is using deception or tricking someone. A consulter of familiar spirits is trying to communicate with the dead, which is not possible, but in fact contacting demons. In verse 15, he gives a prophecy. He says that Yahuwah will raise up a prophet from among their brethren, and we will listen to him. This is talking about Yahusha. He says that a prophet who doesn't speak what he tells them to, or does so for another god, will die, and you will know that he is not of Yah if what he says doesn't come to pass. In chapter 19, he goes over the cities of refuge. These are cities where someone who accidentally kills someone can flee to, and be protected from the avenger, the family of the person that they killed. In verse 15, he relays an important command. It says that at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses a matter is established. The false witness is to be judged, and the punishment to be done to him is what actually was said by the false witness. It then says in verse 21, a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. This has been erroneously interpreted to be a literal eye for an eye. However, this is a Hebrew idiom and a metaphor. We are to judge equally under the law. In chapter 20, it goes over the wars with the Canaanite tribes and says to destroy them so they won't teach them to do after their abominations and wickedness and follow their false gods. In chapter 21, there is a situation where someone is found dead but no one knows what happened to them. They were to take a heifer into the valley and cut off its head and then wash their hands and say they were innocent of it. Do not blame the innocent. Later, it talks about when they go to war and take a woman captive, if they want to take her, they can take her into their house, shave her head, pare her nails, and then change her clothes, and let her mourn her family for a month. After this, you can be her husband if you want her. But if you don't want to be with her, you can let her go. If you have a rebellious child who will not listen to you, even after you chasten and rebuke them, then you should bring them to the elders of the city and tell them the situation. And if they decide it is true, and he is not willing to repent, then they were to stone him to death and put away the evil from among them. Finally, it gives an important command. If a man commits a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, you should hang him on a tree, and his body should not remain all night upon the tree, but you should bury him that day. For he that is hanged is cursed of Elohim, that your land be not defiled, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you for an inheritance. This command is prophetic, as it relates to Yahusha. Yahusha was hanged on a tree, even though he didn't commit a sin worthy of death. It was counted as though he did. He was also not left on the tree all night, but was taken down and buried that same day in the cave. That is the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Shalom.